So the holidays are coming up fast and you've got no idea what to make your family and friends. Well, here's something that's at least one step above a basket of meat and cheese. Now today I'm going to show you how to make this simple and elegant magazine rack. It should only take you about 2 days to build, and that means it's the perfect project for the holidays. Now this one is made from solid walnut, has a bit of an Asian flair to it like a lot of my stuff, and depending on the type of wood that you use, this little rack could complement just about any decor. Now the idea here is for these two pieces to come apart so that you could store it flat, and that's really convenient if you're planning on sending these things to friends and family as gifts. Unfortunately though, when I did mine, I didn't really account for how much the finish was going to build up the thickness, so my pieces don't go together quite as easily as they should. It does take a little coercion to get them apart. But we can improve on that on the second go round. Okay, so here's the idea. They store just like this, which is great if you're going to ship them. Okay, and the way they go together, it's just like that. Now the construction of this piece is fairly simple. It's actually only composed of 4 parts. The 2 outer pieces and then the 2 inner pieces. Now the joinery here is pretty simple. It's just an angled slot, and I'll show you the details on how we make that in just a bit. So now let's take a look at the rough stock that we're going to use to make this project.
All the material for this project is 3/8 of an inch thick. You'll need 4 pieces cut to 4 1/4 inches wide by 16 inches long, and 1 piece that's 4 inches wide and 14 inches long. All of our middle pieces will be cut from the shorter piece.
Now the first thing I want to do is cut our 4 1/4 inch pieces into 2-inch strips, and I want to be able to keep each one of these together. I don't want them to get all mixed up, so I'm going to mark each one with a distinct cabinet maker's triangle so I'll be able to match them up later. Now we need to take 1 piece from each of our matched pairs and make a series of angled cuts. In fact, it's 40 degrees at the miter saw, and you can certainly use the table saw to do the same thing. Now these cuts can get really confusing really fast if you don't draw it out. So I will probably include a diagram with this so that you can download and take a look at so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I've drawn everything on this 1 piece. So that what I'll do is make 1 cut, and I'll make sure I set up a stop block, and then I'll go to all my other pieces and do those as well. And then when I'm ready for the next cut, I reset the stop block. So this way you're sort of batching everything out, and you don't have to repeat the setup. It's going to be much more accurate this way. But I do make all of my markings on 1 piece. So let's head over to the saw and start making some cuts.
The first cut creates the bottom portion of our legs. And the second cut removes the extra material and creates the interlocking joinery.
So now that we've got all of our cut pieces, we keep the 2 together, and then we match it back with one of its original pieces, and we're going to glue this back together into 1 piece once again. So it's really as easy as lining it up, making sure it's even on both sides, applying some glue and clamping it down. Now at this stage of the game, with the ends nice and even, you want to take a piece of scrap and you want to check and make sure that that slot that you've created is big enough and gives you that extra 32nd of an inch for the extra finish that's going to be on the material when it's all said and done. So as long as you have that extra bit of breathing room in there, you're ready to go. Just glue it together.
The glue up is pretty straightforward. A little glue, some clamping pressure, and you're good to go. Just make sure that the joints are nice and even. Even a simple project like this shows you exactly why I have so many clamps.
Now while the glue is drying, we can start to cut our middle pieces.
The only tricky part here is lining up the bottom middle piece, which is located a 1/2 inch up from the top of the slot. So I measure up and extend my line. I do this on both sides just for reference. And now, lining that piece up is going to be a breeze. A little glue on all the joining pieces, and we're ready for the clamps. Now this part is totally optional, but you can cut another 40-degree angle at the bottom of the legs. Just make sure the piece is oriented properly.
Now at this point in the process, it's really up to you where you want to take this. Technically, we could be done right now. This could be a working magazine rack. If you want to start adding curves, this is the time to do it. If you want to get crazy and make some really wacky shape out of it, there's no reason why you can't do that. For me, I'm just going to put some subtle curves in the sides and in the top. That'll just give it that little bit of an Asian flair and kind of play a little trick on the eye when you see it from a distance. Now to do that, I'm going to use a template that I made years ago, and I highly recommend anytime you make a good template, keep it. Don't throw it away when you're done with the project because you can always use it for something else in the future. This was for my zebra wood sitting bench that I made like 2-3 years ago. So it just happens to work perfect for this, and that's what I'm going to do is trace those lines right onto the workpiece. Going to rough cut them at the bandsaw and head over to the router table to do the final trim.
I use a template to trace the curve on all sides, including the inside of the legs. Then I do the rough cuts at the bandsaw. I then double stick tape our two pieces together and attach the template on top. And now I can flush trim them both at the same time. This will save me time as well as give me more consistent results. And for the inside curves, I feel much more comfortable using the oscillating spindle sander.
Now let's talk about the finish. Now for a piece like this, especially if you're making a bunch of them, spraying is really the best way to go because you can cover a large amount in a short amount of time, and usually the finishes that you spray are going to dry quicker, so you could turn it over a lot faster. Now, what I decided to use was a water-based finish, and like I've said before, I really do want to make an effort to go more in that direction with my stuff. What I tried using was this stuff, actually it was on the walnut. I used Vermont natural coatings. Now, I don't know if you guys heard about this material, but it is a special formulation where they actually use whey protein as a binder instead of a really toxic substance. The VOC rating for, this is General Finishes polyacrylic, is 275 grams per liter. According to their labeling, the Vermont natural coatings is less than 180 grams per liter. And they even say here on the can that the toughest US standard right now is 250 grams per liter. So 275, 180. That's pretty darn good. And they also claim that the whey protein binder helps the finish to actually be tougher than most available water-based finishes that we use today. So I used it. It sprayed really well. It went down well. It sands great. And it dried nice and hard. I really have absolutely no complaints. Not to mention, this is on walnut. And traditionally, you put a water-based finish onto a darker wood, and you get a sort of bluish cast or haze to it. And I don't see any trace of that whatsoever. This is really, really good stuff. Interestingly enough, the finish in the can is a pink color. Most water-based finishes that I've used in the past have had a milky look to them. So kind of neat, definitely worth checking out. Price-wise, this was a free sample, so I don't know for sure what it costs, but I'm sure it's probably not cheap. Bottom line, if you're looking to go green, there are some other great options out there for you. Since I've run out, I'm going to go with polyacrylic on mine today. But before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of dye to the surface because I've got a figured maple board here and I want to bring out that grain and try to pop the grain a little bit. So I'm using one of my favorites here. It's General Finishes Vintage Cherry Dye Stain. Now these dye stains are pre-mixed. There's no powders, there's no liquids to mix with water. You can dilute it a little bit if you need to. These are great. I don't know whether they sprinkle a little magic dust in there, but there's just something about the way these dyes apply that's just better than what I can make on my own. And until I figure out a better way to make my own dye, I think I'm going to stick with these. So let's go through that process real quick.
I pre-wet the surface with a little bit of water. This helps the dye spread more evenly. Let the dye soak in, and don't worry about being too neat here. After about an hour, the surface is dry enough to start sanding. I start with 150 grit and try to get most of the dye off of the surface. All we want to do is leave the dye in the deepest pores, so take your time and sand thoroughly up to 180 grit. I then spray 3 coats of polyacrylic with sanding in between each coat.
So 3 coats of a water-based poly gives us a really nice finish. These water-based finishes are really starting to grow on me. They look more and more like lacquer, which I really like. It's one of my favorite finishes. Now you'll notice on this that even though I sanded the dye off of the faces of these pieces, I left it on the sides. And I also left it on the inside edges as well. And why? I don't know. I thought it might look neat. And I kind of took a gamble because I've never really done that before, but the finished product looks kind of cool. I don't know that I would do this on every project. It's kind of gimmicky, but it looks pretty neat, so I left it as it is. So fortunately, these two will come apart, much easier than my last rendition, so you could store them flat or ship them. And I'm really happy with the way it came out. So if you have the time, batch a bunch of these out, and I think they will make great gifts for the holidays. They still are a little bit tricky to get together, just to get those angles right, but once it's there, boom, you got yourself a magazine rack.